Who's wrong and who's wronger? In this corner, followed by millions, James the Exploding Unicorn Breakwell. And in that corner, ignored by millions, Steve Dash Rinko Levers.
Hey everybody, welcome to another scintillating version of Wrong and Wronger. I am Steve Deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, Olivas, and he is James Snubbed Again Breakwell. And James, speaking of Oscar snubs and Hall of Fame snubs, it seems that you have a somewhat legendary snub in your recent history.
I'm actually impressed by this snub. It was so total, and I think it was not even deliberate, which makes it just that much better. But I may or may not have mentioned that I don't eat, carbs and sugar like every single podcast for the last 2 years at least. It comes up constantly. It's one of the many reasons my wife won't listen to these podcasts. She hates hearing me talk about it. Everybody hates hearing me talk about it. But I have definitely relayed this message to you. But then you went on somebody else's podcast, somebody's keto podcast, and you're like, and apparently you've been doing keto, which I also didn't know. I knew you were losing weight. I didn't know how you were losing weight. But you said, you brought it up, and you're like, yeah, like 3 months ago I found out about keto. Heard about it from Brian Forsyth. Never heard of it before. Nobody in my life has ever mentioned this. And now, thanks to Brian and no one else, I will continue to lose weight. It was, and you, like, I told you about it, and you actually felt bad, which I found funny, because I didn't know you had human feelings. But just walk me through what was going on there.
James, this is how you and I differ. Other than I'm awesome, but it's that I understand the tragedy of human emotion, and to you, it's sort of a curious anomaly. But yeah, I did massively snub Breakwell, and the funny thing is, I realized it like hours before he texted me. And outraged, by the way, ready to come and burn my place to the ground over this. But I went on a keto podcast because one of the rock stars I've written a book with is all in keto, and he's talked to me a lot about it. But the thing of it is, Breakwell and I had not only talked about it, but he and I texted about it quite a bit as he was sort of guiding my decisions at the grocery store. All of that was for naught, as I gave all the credit to somebody else, and I sit here humiliated before you, Mr. Breakwell.
I mean, if it had been deliberate, I would understand more, because you clearly have something to gain from Brian there. There's a business relationship. Our business relationship is going nowhere. Neither of us will ever profit from this. It's just, if anything, it's hurting us both at this point. So I get why you'd want to toss the credit to him. What I took away from this, though, is the fact that you won't actually do something until you hear it from the mouth of an aging rocker. Like, I could tell you the best life advice ever, like, hey, Steve, don't light yourself on fire. Like, I think I'm going to light myself on fire. But then if Brian says don't light yourself on fire, like, you know what? That's a good insight. I'm not going to light myself on fire. So it's just interesting. I think we all have those people. Like, you hear advice from everywhere, but there's certain people we listen to and certain people we don't. And now I know which category I'm in, which is probably safer for both of us, to be honest.
It is maddening that, and this happens all the time. My wife does this too. She's like, I told you that a month ago. But I'll be like, oh, wait, I can't use James Breakwell here. I'll be like, my buddy Brad said this. And my wife's like, I told you that already. But now Brad told me. And Breakwell, sort of like my wife, he can talk till he's blue in the mouth. But when an aging rock star says something. I mean, James, in fairness, you don't have a platinum album hanging on your wall. So what the heck do you know?
This is true. And everybody knows the more albums you sell, the more you know about diet and nutrition and every other topic. That's why when celebrities give us advice or tell us how to vote, you should always listen to them, because obviously by being more successful, they know more about everything. And on the flip side, by being less successful, you and I know nothing about anything, which is a little bit humbling. But I mean, that's where we're at. Other than in Uganda, where everyone should listen to us because we are still the number 2 podcast in a very specific category. So they should listen to our every word and do everything we say, unless it's illegal, and we can't be held liable for that.
I believe an Indian listener in India said we also have somebody in India who listens.
Whoa.
So in that household, we are in the top 5.
At least. I mean, do you really? I don't know though. I feel like people who listen to podcasts listen to like every podcast. You probably got 100 podcasts on your list. I bet that person does too. I would not give us credit for being in the top 5 in their household, but I would say we're in the top 100. I think we're up there somewhere.
That's not bad. I mean,
Yeah.
just on a straight percentage basis. But James, to answer your question directly, I'm a little surprised I didn't think of you either, but I was so flattered that they asked me to be on their show. All I could think of, and I got tracked into, how am I going to compliment this guy, and how am I going to pump him up, and how am I going to shill the book? How can I hawk this thing? And I accomplished all 3 of those tasks. And then I hung up and I went away feeling high because I think I nailed it. And you know as well as I do, James, when you're asked to do things, because we're entertainers, we're sort of, we have pressure to be funny and engaging and interesting, and that doesn't come lightly to either of us. It's a tall order. So when I felt like I hit a home run, I walked away high. But then I'm sleeping that night. And I'm thinking, you know, I do remember, literally, in the grocery store, I took a picture of what was in my cart and sent it to you. And I thought, that happened well before I met with Brian Forsythe that day. And I felt horrible. And my only hope, the only toehold of sanity I had, was that there was no chance in hell you were ever going to come across that podcast. And yet... some alert listener probably sold me out and sent it to you, and this is why we're only number 2 in Uganda.
You know what? You know how I found out about it? It was your Twitter feed.
Tell me.
Twitter decided to start showing me your tweets again. I guess I lingered over one too long, and now I've been cursed by seeing probably a quarter to a third of what you tweet. And in this particular case, I think a mutual follower, Exploding Possum, had replied to it. So it popped into my feed again, and I see it's like, this has been up for all this time and nobody's commented. It's like, yeah, because you post a link to a video or a podcast, nobody clicks on it. But I thought, you know what? I'm going to click on this because I'm curious. And you know what? And boy, did I learn something that podcast.
So yeah, the jig was up, the cat was out of the bag, and Breakwell was blowing up my phone, and I felt bad. And I still feel bad. I like to think I'm more loyal than that, but apparently I'm just sludge like everybody else.
My favorite part is that had you mentioned me, had you just gone out of your way to name drop me like crazy, it would have made no difference in either of our lives whatsoever. Like, I'm sure their podcast is more successful than ours, but that's not saying much, you know, rather than going out to 5 people, maybe they're going out to a couple hundred or a couple thousand, but either way, like, we would still be here on our podcast a week later, you know, talking to nobody. So we would be in the same spot, but now we're in the same spot with you feeling bad about yourself. So I guess overall, I came out ahead. Like, if I had to pick one outcome, like you feeling okay and name dropping me for no effect, or you feeling awful and also no effect, I guess I'm going to go with you feeling awful.
That's true. I don't drop your name very often, but typically when I do, it's followed by the words, "We'd like you to leave." And so I wanted to at least stay on their podcast because your reputation precedes you in most establishments.
But I mean, it goes both ways, because I name drop you from time to time in the newsletter, and sometimes I say Steve Alevis, and sometimes I say my podcast co-host, because the name Steve Alevis just doesn't mean anything to him. I feel bad about that. But it doesn't matter how many times I put the link to that podcast in that newsletter. It's like, basically, there's a very small subset that already listens to it, and if you don't already listen to it after 2 or 3 years, like, you're never going to cross that line and start listening to it. It's not like, oh, I just heard about this. Like, at this point, you have made a conscious choice not to listen to it, and you were fine with that decision, and I'm not going to sway you by name dropping anybody.
Yeah, I will say, for as popular as you are in your own mind, Breakwell, I still have to parenthetically say who you are when I say your name. You never have to say Tom Brady, parentheses, he's a football player, did this, like everyone kind of knows.
Yeah, I mean, every time I've ever mentioned you, I say my podcast co-host, Steve Olivas. Every single time. Or when I tease the tweet on Twitter, I say a real psychologist or a psychologist. I don't always put real there because I'm not entirely sure of your credentials. But I never say, see what Steve Olivas has to say, because that's not getting either of us anywhere.
Sure.
And Twitter's funny, too. If I were to actually, like, maybe the more direct way to name drop you would be to put a link, like, you know, if I say at whatever is it literally at Steve Olivas?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't even know. I haven't manually typed it in years. But like if I put, here's what at Steve Olivas has to say, not only would no one click on it, nobody would see it. If you tag a second Twitter account in a tweet, here's a pro tip for you today. If you tag a second Twitter account, nobody sees that tweet. The algorithms hate it. People hate it. And they already hate tweets with links in the first place. That would just be double hate. And that, I don't even, like single hate stops us dead in our tracks the way it goes.
Sure.
Like, double hate is not going to get us anywhere. But
that's got to be to protect celebrities from everybody adding them, right?
Maybe that is, like, it really, really buries it until, like, somebody you also follow, like, replies to that tweet, like, which is how I saw your link pop up. I am curious, though, so did really, like, what made you actually start doing this? Because I've been talking about it forever, and you clearly have no desire to be like me at all. So what pushed you over the line?
Well, probably like 15 years ago, a friend of ours, a female, went on Atkins and lost like 30 pounds. And I tried it for a month and I think I gained a pound. And I thought, well, she's a chick. That's got to be the difference. And so I've kind of dabbled off and on through the years. But then your success really caught my attention, James Breakwell. Now, not saying you weren't a beautiful, beautiful man in the first place, but I didn't think you had 35 pounds to lose. Like, you're not built like me. You're pretty slender. You're a runner, so you're tall and you're sort of naturally thin. So when you lost 35 pounds, I was like, dang, there's got to be something to this. And so I went from trying to limit my carbs, which meant only 2 cookies after dinner instead of 3, to making the right-hand turn into, I'm really going to commit to this. And then it was sealed when I talked to Brian, because he kind of knows the science stuff behind it. And I was like, fine, I'll try it. And it was the greatest thing that has ever happened to me.
And people, they make it way too hard. Like, you can go into the weeds on this stuff and read all the books and get, be a real Puritan about it. Or you can just be like, you know what, the carbs and sugar, I'm going to cut them out of my life as much as possible. I bring this up to my wife sometimes too. She's like, I can't do what you do. Like, I'm not going to eat all meat. It's like, you don't have to eat all meat. Like, there are definite degrees of this. If you just reduce carbs and sugar, like, you don't have to be all the way in ketosis to have an effect. That's the one big thing. They're like, well, if I can't cut below 15 carbs, I might as well not even try. It's like, no, if you cut from 100 carbs to 50 carbs, that's progress. If you cut from 50 to 10 or whatever, any carb or sugar that you replace with just fat and protein, I mean, that's moving in the right direction. The one interesting thing I found on that thing, because I actually, believe it or not, I listened to it all the way through. I was vacuuming, and it was too inconvenient to change. And also, I thought I can give Steve a hard time about this, so I better listen to all of it, get all my ammunition.
Maybe he mentions me at the end. That's what you were thinking.
But I listened, and you said that you didn't think you were going to keep going down, and I think you will if you stick with it. Like, I don't think your body is going to be like, well, we're going to stop at 20% body fat and 207 or 200 or whatever it is. Like, if you keep going, I think you will be shocked at how lean you get.
Well, that's sort of your story, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, I did not think I had that much to lose. Now, granted, I've had my ups and downs. At my peak, I was 6'2" and like 204, and like I looked in the mirror, and it was clearly there was a problem there. But really, for most of my life after college, I kind of yo-yoed up between 185 and 195, and I could gain like 6 pounds in a bad weekend. I could just pile it on, and then I'd diet or do whatever. And like at my very, very best, if I was dieting or running, I would finally get down to like 175, and I was still kind of skinny fat. I still didn't really have abs, but I could get down there, and then I would just gain it back. And it wasn't until, when I started this time around, I just started cutting calories, and I was like, this is stupid, I can't do that. And then I read like 9 books in a row about, how carbs and sugar are evil and all that. I thought, all right, they cause every disease in the world, whatever, I'll give this a try. And then the weight left and stayed off, and then I took it a step further, thought, all these vegetables are just taking up useless space in my stomach. I could just be filling it with meat. And that's when I made the transition. And people are like terrified of the carnivore diet, but I mean it's just fat and protein, and it really works for me. It cleared up some other stuff I was having problems with, and it just it simplified things, and it's easier for me mentally. I can go you don't have to do it this way either, because this is another thing that turns people off, because I just eat one meal a day, and people are like, that's ridiculous, I can't do that. And it's like, well, I just know that at night I'm going to eat so much meat that I don't ever want to eat again. And when I know that's coming up, it's not a big deal for me not to eat during the day. So I just go, and at night I eat a ton of meat. Sometimes I have cheese on it, sometimes I don't. I usually use mustard and hot sauce, and I go again. But you don't have to go that far. But I've gotten one person ever to take my advice on this, which is why I wasn't surprised that you didn't really take my advice. There was one guy at the gym who saw me working out, and I told him about it. He's like, well, that sounds pretty good. He instantly lost like 15 or 20 pounds. Like, he dropped a lot of weight, but then the holidays came around, he started eating sugar and stuff again, and shockingly, the weight came back. Here's the other piece of advice I'm going to give you that you're also going to disregard until Brian Forsyth mentions it to you.
I'm going to ask Brian about this.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So you've got the weight loss, you got that part down. Here's the next thing you need to do. You need to lift weights. You don't have to lift crazy weights. You don't have to be a bodybuilder, but you got to lift weights. Just start out with a basic 5x5 program. You've got like 10,000 extra acres in the Steve Olivas mansion where you could put a squat rack and you'd be just fine. Don't even have to leave the house, because we all know that Memphis is going to be shut down for the next 20 years when you guys get this 4 to 6 inches of snow. So hopefully the delivery guy will brave it and give that to you. But if you keep eating like you're doing and add in some light to moderate weightlifting, you will look like an entirely different person, and then I will have to find something else to make fun of you for other than your physical appearance.
Wow. Will I look like John Bon Jovi circa 1989?
No. There are limits to science, Steve. We can't get you that far.
Yeah, I mentioned that to my wife this morning about my hair, and she said, you used to have a little more up in this region right here. And I thought, how dare you, woman? And then I sulked and went away and got like a feather earring and a shark tooth necklace, because I'm going to get to Bon Jovi circa 1989. But I have started lifting weights a little bit.
Oh, did you?
I
beat me to
well,
it.
I thought of that and thought, well, I sort of look like a skinny old guy from every place that's lost weight, and I don't like that either. But anyway, no, it's been great. And I always hear people complaining about all the pandemic weight they've put on. And I thought, between me and Breakwell, we've lost like 75 pounds. Like, yes. The pandemic is the perfect time to get healthy. What are you talking about?
Yeah, and I really wish they would have gone the opposite direction. We're dancing in dangerous territory, but I will say this. I think the best possible thing to get people healthy through all this would have been to keep gyms open and get more people in the gym, rather than having everybody staying home and gaining weight. I think that was probably the opposite of what we should have done. But good thing is nobody listens to this, so we probably won't get 1,000 angry comments about that. But there's really, health-wise, there's no downside to getting strong. And I did what you did before. Like, when I would lose weight, you just look skinny and weak. And it's great when you first start working out. So like guys who I think we all kind of have our genetic limit that you hit. And if I had actually stayed in shape from college and been lifting the whole time, like 25, 26, I probably would have gotten as fit as I ever would have gotten. And after that, I would have just been maintaining and slowly losing. But because I got so out of shape for so long and then started lifting at 34 or 35, all of a sudden, like, I can get all these gains. I can make progress for another 3 or 4 years. It's spectacular. And now if you're just starting, like, that first year, you make all the progress. You look different, like, every week. It's incredible. And then only later do you like, oh, I've hit a wall. I guess I'm going to work out all this time and gain, like, maybe 1 pound of muscle a year. But you got a long time till you do that. So right now, when you work out, it's like you're on steroids. It's incredible.
Let me say one thing you mentioned before about eating only one meal a day. And people are like, screw that noise. I can't do that. I will say this. It's funny to me how I'm not hungry ever. Like, I'm never full. Like, you might eat till you're gorged, but because you eat so much at once, but I'm never really full, but I'm also not hungry, which is a very strange thing to experience for me. But if you eat enough fat, like, I don't even miss the carbs. I went through the holidays and didn't think twice about it. Like, I thought, ooh, this is going to be a real challenge, but it really wasn't. My wife made cookies like she always did, had those hanging around. She made a cake last night because she was bored. Like, it doesn't... there's no real draw. Like, once that addictive addictive part of your brain turns off, you just feel fine.
Yeah, and so a lot of people say, well, I can't avoid eating candy if it's in the house. My house is nothing but candy. I literally bought 25 pounds of candy after Halloween, so we missed trick-or-treating because we were quarantined at the time, so I went out and bought it. I bought a ton of candy for Halloween. I buy cookies and cakes and stuff for the kids because, you know what, it's terrible for them, but their metabolisms can still handle it. And I grew up on it at that age. I wish I could switch them over to eating bacon and eggs and all that and beef and all that, but it's just never going to happen. But anyway, this stuff is in the house. They eat it in front of me every night, and I'm never tempted to do it because I remember what happens when I do it. It just I eat it, and it's like, okay, that was great for 10 seconds. Now I got to eat another one and get another 10 seconds out of it, and it doesn't last. The last time I really went off the rails, and it was before I was quite as serious about it as I am now. But my grandma died a year and a half ago, whatever it was. Maybe it was 2 years ago now. But it was out in the middle of nowhere in Iowa, and there was no way I could take my own meat and grill for myself. I'm just gonna have to eat like everybody else. And I went to my aunt's house, and they had one of those trays of Rice Krispie treats covered in chocolate. And I think in one sitting, I ate literally half that pan. I just ate it all. And it's like afterwards, it's like, what good did that do me? I look back on that still. It's like, what is the taste of a dessert yesterday? That is my very Zen mantra. It's like it didn't do me any good. It was great for 3 minutes. And then it's like, okay, that's over. What now? Whereas if you just eat meat or you eat stuff with low carbs, it's like, okay, I'm full and I feel better all day and I look better all day. There's really just no comparison.
Yeah, you got to be careful not to turn that switch on, or to turn the key in that engine, because now the Rice Krispies are calling your name. You're like, all right, just one more. And then you start doing the thing you always do, which is there's this little argument you have with yourself that you know you're going to lose anyway, so you just say, what the hell, and you eat it.
Yeah.
But if the drive isn't there, and this isn't like a whole AA thing, but the drive isn't there, and I think that's really remarkable given where I come from.
And I think the key for it for me was that you can still drink alcohol. If you had to completely cut alcohol out of your life, I would have been done. And granted, as I've been doing this, I've been drinking quite a bit less. But, so I stopped drinking beer. Beer used to be my go-to. But, beer, if you really drink it all, if you day drink or do whatever, you're at a party or something, it fills you up. It makes you feel heavy. You feel awkward the next morning. There's consequences in the bathroom. It's just a lot. And I found out that if you just stick to hard alcohol, you just sip some whiskey or things like that, it burns right out of your system. You feel great. There's less of a hangover. So that's been my thing. I eat meat and drink whiskey. Whiskey is definitely not carnivore, but it's still keto. It doesn't have those carbs or sugar. So that's what I do. Now you mentioned one day that you bought a keto margarita mix or something like that.
Oh Jesus. No, it was pina colada.
Oh, that's
keto
what it was.
Pina colada mix. God, jeez, it's funny you just mentioned there are consequences in the bathroom the next day. I tell you what, that stuff shot through me without slowing down. I think it actually picked up momentum as it went through me, and it came out as it went in complete liquid form. Now, I don't recommend that for my enemies.
One thing I did here just recently is I picked up a Soda Stream knockoff, because I used to think, and I was trying to cut back. Diet Coke doesn't have any calories or any sugar or whatever. It's like, okay, this is great, but I would just drink so much of it. It's got a lot of other stuff in there, but I picked up a Soda Stream type thing, and it turns out I'm not actually that addicted to the flavor or anything else. I just like the carbonation. Apparently I like bubbles. So now I carbonate water and drink that, and that actually fills me up quite a bit too. It's delicious.
You have seltzer?
Yeah, seltzer, and I'll go and I put a cap full of lemon juice in it and 2 squirts of lime juice, and it's
all right.
It tastes pretty good. I was drinking it before that just without it. So, there's other stuff you can do. You don't have to be a total purist. There are some people who go carnivore and they don't do any spices. They just eat beef and water. There's some crazy people who eat meat raw, and that's a bridge too far for me, too. On the one hand, I get that when you cook it, you probably lose some nutrients. On the other hand, I don't want to die. I don't want to gag trying to get this down. And you can get a steak. Have you ever had a steak where it's just, rare is good. There's always got more flavor. It's just a little bit too rare and you can't even chew it. It's like chewing on putty. You can't tear it apart.
Yes.
I can't imagine eating straight up raw meat. That just would not end well.
I will add before we go, I don't eat anywhere near as clean as you. I have breaded chicken tenders every morning. I have fruit because I need the sugar. I just love the sweet. And, keep traffic moving on the freeway, leaving a little fiber. We've talked about that before. So I eat dates and figs. I like those. And I have pork rinds because I can't just eat meat. I need crunchy in there too. So I'm not a purist, but I'm doing it well enough that I don't feel hungry and I'm dropping like a rock.
Okay, I will say this will be my last piece of advice, and that nobody will listen to, and if they do listen to it, they're just definitely going to turn off the podcast. So I thought for years my problem was I did not have enough fiber. Like, doctors told me I needed more fiber, and so I was eating the standard American diet. Like, I was like putting like a triple dose of fiber in the morning, and I had to have this or there were issues. And it turns out that fiber itself was the issue. When I went to a diet that has literally no fiber, fiber at all, it fixed everything. Which is not what you would expect, which is not what the medical literature will say. But it was like people on Instagram who did the carnivore diet, they're like, yeah, I did this and it works. It's like, well, that's experience. Let me give it a try. And it does. So I don't take fiber. I don't take any other kind of supplements anymore. Eliminating the fiber fixed things. So if you're searching for that last little bit, try going without fiber and see what happens. You might be surprised.
Well, potty advice from James, the freely pooping Breakwell. This is stuff you can't get just anywhere. Like, you can Google, how much does James Breakwell poop? You're not going to find it online.
That's true.
You got to come here to Wrong and Wronger. Everybody in Uganda now knows Breakwell's bathroom habits, and you're better off for it. I got to walk us out of here, James, so that everybody can go and do whatever their bran muffin and coffee tells them to do. So until we meet again, this is Steve, feeling pretty empty, Olivas, and James, I gotta make a quick run for it, Breakwell, saying thanks for listening, thanks for watching, thanks for supporting the show, both of you. And until we meet again, always remember that two wrongs can make a right.